Hi, my name is CH. I have worked as a managed investments product specialist in Singapore for over 15 years and would like to offer, through short video courses, the investments related knowledge that I have picked up throughout the years to anyone who is keen to learn more about investments. This video is part of a series of videos focusing on providing basic yet detailed knowledge on mutual funds for Singapore-based or Singapore-booked investors. In this video, we aim to cover and explain the different types of documents that an investor may come across when investing in mutual funds. Mutual funds investing is highly regulated, and this means the fund provider need to create, prepare, and provide quite a number of different documents as part of the legal and regulatory requirements. Some of these documents are intended for regulators, some for distributors, and some for investors and prospects. In this video, we will focus on documents intended for investors. In Singapore context, the most important documents for investors are collectively called offering documents. Before any fund subscriptions can be accepted, it is mandatory for a distributor to provide the offering documents to an investor and get the investor's acknowledgement that the offering documents are received and the investor has read and understood the features and risks of the fund. The main offering document is the fund prospectus, which is a comprehensive legal document. For authorized and recognized funds intended for Singapore retail investors, the Fund Product Highlight Sheet, or PHS, is also a mandatory offering document. Besides the offering documents, other useful documents that detail the ongoing updates and statistics of a fund for investors are the Fund Factsheet, Market or Fund Commentary, and Presentation Deck. Other documents that investors may come across include the audited financial reports and shareholder letters that a typical company would produce, as well as occasionally the subscription or redemption forms that may require investor inputs on specific personal information. Given most mutual funds for global investors are domiciled in Ireland and Luxembourg, it is also common to find some Europe regulatory specific documents that are provided alongside the offering documents. These are applicable to Europe investors with Singapore investment accounts and may be applicable depending on the investor's residency location or other European-related factors. Some of the frequently seen documents in this category include Key Information Document, or KID, and Packaged Retail and Insurance-Based Products Regulation, or PRIIP, document. Separately, mutual funds that are offered in Hong Kong come with a Key Facts Statement, or KFS, that is similar to the Singapore PHS in purpose. You may receive the KFS if you have a Hong Kong booked investment account or if you are subscribing to a Hong Kong domiciled fund. When in doubt, do check with the distributor whether any of these documents are applicable to you. Let's go through the more important documents in the next few slides. The fund prospectus is sometimes termed as offering memorandum, or explanatory memorandum, or private placement memorandum. It is also common to see the abbreviation of these terms, which are OM, EM, and PPM. As previously mentioned, the prospectus is the main mandatory offering document that a Singapore investor must receive before committing to buy. The intent is that since fund investing can be complex, this detailed document that explains the fund must be provided to the investor so that the investor has sufficient knowledge on the fund's features and risks before the investor commits to buy the fund. The latest updated version of the offering documents must be lodged and registered with MAS as part of the regulatory requirements. The prospectus is like an encyclopedia. It is typically the largest document of a fund by size and details everything from a legal and regulatory perspective that covers from the background of the fund family and associated responsible parties in the company structure to transaction processes and fees, to elaboration of every fund within the fund family, including their objectives and key terms and share classes, to all the relevant risks involved in investing in these funds. For funds that are not domiciled in Singapore, there would be an additional Singapore addendum to cover the Singapore-related regulatory clauses and processes. This addendum is usually added to the front or back of the original prospectus, or exists as a separate supplement document. Going through a prospectus can be challenging. A full prospectus can typically be several hundred pages long, and since the prospectus is at fund family level, the more sub-funds there are in the fund family means that the more pages there are in the prospectus to cover all the sub-funds. As mentioned, the latest prospectus must be lodged and registered with MAS as part of the regulatory requirements, and this is usually refreshed and relodged semi-annually or annually for most fund providers. If there are small updates in the interim, fund providers sometimes create an addendum document instead to highlight the changes. It is important to note that the investor must receive the actual prospectus and all the additional addendums as part of the offering process. Otherwise, it would be a breach of the regulations. As important as it is, the prospectus unfortunately is way too lengthy and has too much legal terms and technical jargons, making it next to impossible for an average retail investor to digest and understand it. As a result, many investors tend to just ignore after receiving it, leading to potentially missing out some key information or key risks of the fund. It is also a document that serves to provide the how-to and what-to information, such as how the company is structured, how the transaction process works, what the fund intends to invest in, and what are the potential risks to consider. It, however, does not provide any what is happening now updates on the current status of the fund portfolio and the actual performance of the fund. For the latter, there are other documents that the investor needs to rely on, which we will cover in a while. Here is a snapshot of PIMCO GIS Income Fund's prospectus as an example, with a Singapore supplement section attached on top of the original standard prospectus. As the prospectus is simply too overwhelming for the average retail investor, many regulators globally come up with a stopgap solution to mandate fund providers to create a simplified version of the prospectus into another offering document. In Singapore, this is the Product Highlight Sheet, or PHS. Compared to the prospectus, which is a fund family document that covers many funds, the PHS usually refers to a specific fund, so all registered share classes of the same fund that is intended for retail investors can use the same PHS. The PHS is basically a solution by MAS to provide a simplified and summarized version of the prospectus, with contents that are deemed most important for retail investors to understand before committing to buy. A PHS is typically not more than 10 pages long, so you can imagine only the most critical information from the hundreds of pages long prospectus is extracted and put inside the PHS. While the PHS bears the essence of a prospectus, it is not a replacement. The PHS cannot fully cover all the legalities of the transaction. Therefore, it needs to be offered together with the prospectus to investors. The PHS will also mention multiple times for investors to refer to the prospectus for further details and elaboration on the clauses and information. In short, when in doubt, always refer to the prospectus. Given the PHS is a MAS solution, MAS has provided a standardized template for fund providers to use. Therefore, PHS across funds look very similar in formatting, and the contents are nearly the same. The PHS contains a list of specific information of a fund that MAS deems are the most important for retail investors to know before buying the fund. These include the key responsible parties of the fund, such as management company, custodian, etc., product suitability recommendations, key product feature and investment strategy, key risks, fees involved, valuation and transaction frequency and processes, and a glossary of key terms. As previously mentioned, the PHS is useful but not complete. If you have the time and the ability to go through and understand the prospectus, do make an effort to do so, as the prospectus contains much more information for you to make a more comprehensive assessment of the fund. Here is a snapshot of PIMCO GIS Income Fund's product highlight sheet as an example. Besides the prospectus and PHS that are mandatory offering documents, one other very important document for investors is the fund fact sheet. The fact sheet serves to fill a major information gap in the offering documents, that is, the current status of the fund portfolio and the actual performance of the fund. As such, while the fact sheet is not an offering document, most distributors provide the fact sheet alongside the offering documents to investors so that investors can have a more complete assessment of the fund before committing to buy. Most fact sheets are updated monthly, while a few are done quarterly. A fact sheet usually refers to a specific fund share class, in order to reflect accurately the statistics of that single share class. It should be noted that some funds may not produce fact sheets for some share classes, especially if those share classes have few investors only. The fact sheet does contain some repetitive information that is found in the prospectus or PHS, such as fund objective, fund domicile, benchmark, dealing frequency, fees, and subscription requirements. But it also contains share class specific information such as launch date, share class currency, identification codes, etc. What is most important is that the fact sheet contains the historical performance of the specific share class of a fund up till the date of the publication of the fact sheet. The performance data is usually presented in calendar year basis, as well as cumulative time periods of 1 month, 3 month, year to date, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, and since inception. Some fact sheets provide graphical charts besides numerical data for better reference, as a picture tells 1,000 words. The performance data is extremely important for investors, as it provides factual information on how good or bad and how consistent or volatile the performance of the fund has been over time. Investors can also easily use this data to make comparisons across funds. Some fact sheets will indicate an additional set of performance data with maximum upfront fee applied. This is not really useful, as different distributors can charge different amounts of upfront fees, and they are usually lower than the maximum allowed. The next most important information available in fact sheet is the summary snapshots of the underlying holdings in the fund portfolio. This is usually presented with top 10 holding positions, as well as percentage breakdown by geography, sector, and currency. Beyond the vague description of the fund strategy and objective, this allows investors to understand what the fund actually invests in and how are the exposures split by the different categories. Careful investors can also use this to check if the actual investments tally with the intended strategy. Some funds will include market and performance commentaries in the fact sheet, while others will produce a separate commentary document. We will cover commentaries shortly. Last but not least, it will provide a list of risks involved in investing in the fund that is similar to the PHS. The risk section is a regulatory requirement in most investors' documents. Some funds may create a launch term sheet for purposes of providing associated information during an initial offering period before the fund is launched. This is usually formatted similarly to a fund fact sheet, with the exceptions of actual performance data and actual portfolio holdings information, since the fund is not yet launched. Some fund providers will try to include instead back-tested performance data and intended model portfolio information as a guidance on what the fund might turn out to be. Here is a snapshot of PIMCO GIS Income Fund's fact sheet as an example. The commentary document is an optional document that funds use to give more color on how the investment manager and his team views and assess the market conditions and the associated actions and changes taken in the fund portfolio. This supplements the static month-end information in the fund fact sheet and helps to explain what the fund did and why it ended up the way it is at the end of that month. The commentary document would normally be updated in the same frequency as the fact sheet, which is normally monthly. Some funds will also embed the commentaries within the fact sheet, so that investors only need to refer to one document for the updates, while others keep them separated. Commentaries can be worded as short as one paragraph or as long as a few pages. Commentaries can come in two flavors. Market level comments are more generic. This basically highlights the key market events that has happened in the past month and whether the investment manager has an opinion on these events and whether he will look to make any adjustments to the portfolio as a result of these events, without specifying too much details on the adjustments. Portfolio-specific comments are more useful. This basically is a short one to few paragraphs explaining notable changes in the portfolio, be it geographical or sectoral breakdown changes, or specific holding additions, removals, or adjustments, and the reasons and rationale for making these changes. Commentaries make the investment experience more interesting, and through the commentaries, you can get a feel on the style and preferences of the investment manager, which may reinforce your conviction in the fund if you find the manager is aligned to your own thinking. Here is a snapshot of PIMCO GIS Income Fund's commentary as an example. Fund presentation decks, which are also sometimes called sales deck or marketing deck, can be extremely useful. However, they are not easily available to investors. Creating a proper presentation deck takes a lot of effort and is usually done for a specific purpose. Most fund providers usually prepare and create presentation decks for product seminars and conferences, training sessions, as well as detailed product pitching to institutional and sophisticated investors. These decks are mostly created for internal use only, for the above specific events and purposes, and therefore are not publicly available. The information available inside the decks also vary depending on their intended usage. There have, however, been distributor demand for investor-friendly versions of these decks so that distributors can use them directly in their own product pitching sessions or send them direct to the more sophisticated investors. For these requests, the fund provider will then run by their legal and compliance team to review and approve for an end investor version of the deck to be given to the distributors. The contents of the decks can vary greatly among fund providers and funds. As you can imagine, a fund provider will put in much effort to produce an attractive presentation deck for a large-scale marketing event, and conversely, will put in less effort to produce a deck if it's intended for a small client request. Nevertheless, presentation decks are designed with investors in mind, so they are a lot more graphical and easy to understand than prospectuses and fact sheets. Some of the well-prepared decks can contain very useful information for investors looking to understand a fund in greater depth. Fund providers also sometimes create a simplified version called sales brochure. that is usually just a few pages long and contains key selling points of a fund. A good and comprehensive fund presentation deck will typically contain the following: a starting section introducing the fund provider, including the history of the company, its achievements, the core values and principles, and the company structure. This provides the investor a high-level understanding of the fund provider and its broad capabilities. This follows a section talking about the specific fund in terms of its investment process, including details of the criteria of filtering and selecting an underlying investment, the fund's buy and sell principles, and how risks are managed within and outside the portfolio. These are extremely useful to investors, as this information are mostly not available in any other investor documents, and especially not presented in an easy-to-understand manner elsewhere. Most of these details are typically only provided for due diligence process conducted by fund selectors from distributors and institutional investors. Following the fund's investment process, there should also be some examples given on specific holdings in the portfolio, with elaboration on the thought process and reasons by the investment manager to add them into the portfolio. These examples, together with the investment process, give investors a more vivid insight into how the fund is actually being managed on a daily basis and what are the activities and efforts done behind the scene to run the fund. There should also be a section talking about the fund's historical performance and recent market and portfolio changes, alongside with additional comments from the investment manager on this information. This section can sometimes be more detailed than the fund fact sheet and fund commentary. On performance and market changes, there might also be a section covering a recent adverse market event and how the investment manager navigated through the event and his actions taken in the fund portfolio. This gives investors more color on how the manager handles risks and opportunities, as well as how the manager behaves under pressure. There can be more interesting things found in a presentation deck, but as you can gather by now, you should really get your hands on a fund presentation deck from your distributor if possible, so that you can get more information on the fund besides the usual documents. Here is a snapshot of PIMCO GIS Balanced Income and Growth Funds brochure as an example. There are several other documents produced by the fund providers for investors, though they are of less significance compared to those that we have covered. Just to highlight two more here before we conclude this video. As a public equity company, mutual funds will also have to provide all the relevant standard company documents and procedures to investors, such as audited annual reports, shareholder letters, call for annual general meetings, and have various corporate actions notified to investors. Subscription and redemption forms are normally not given to investors, as the transactions are usually done by a distributor, so the distributor is responsible to handle these operational documents on behalf of investors. However, there are some rare occasions whereby a transaction form will require certain information disclosures direct from the investor, and so the distributor will have to contact the investor to seek the relevant information in order to complete the forms. Here is a snapshot of PIMCO GIS Income Fund's annual report as an example. Hopefully, this video has given you a better overview and understanding of the different types of documents that an investor may come across when investing in mutual funds. This concludes this video. Do check out my other videos to find out and learn more about mutual funds. If you find this video useful and would like to see more related contents, please click on like and subscribe to the channel, as well as share this video to someone else that might find this useful too. Last but not least, if you spot any mistakes or inaccurate information in this video, or have any suggestions to help improve this video, please do drop a comment below. Thank you and have a great day.